Well, what does God's voice sound like? If you went to the movies a few decades ago, in movies back then, God's voice sounded like George Burns without the cigar. That's how he sounded to John Denver in those movies back then. In more recent movies, he sounded like Morgan Freeman. That's the way he spoke to Jim Carrey in a more recent movie. And, well, if you think back to, the classic, Ten Commandments, he spoke in that deep, booming voice to Charlton Heston as Moses. For those a little younger that may not remember the Ten Commandments, the deep, booming voice is kind of like Darth Vader without the heavy breathing. That's probably how we most often imagine God's voice, is that deep and booming voice. And that is how the Scriptures do describe it at times. That's what his voice was described as in the book of Exodus as he spoke from Mount Sinai. It was like a blaring trumpet speaking from the mountain. But then there's other places in Scripture where his voice is described as a gentle whisper, speaking to Elijah. So what does God's voice sound like? In the book of Esther, God's voice comes through in some even more surprising ways. A couple of weeks ago when we started studying Esther, we've had a couple of week break because of weather and then because of Jan's surgery, but it's good to be finally back. And here we go on the third try here. I've been ready with this message for 3 weeks. On the third try, here we go. You're finally going to get it. The previous message, when we started Esther, we looked in chapter 1 and we saw there that King Xerxes was trying to show how powerful he was, show that he was in control of everything, and he was just really displaying his wealth, just really putting on the dog and just, making everybody, making the point with everybody that I'm the best. You can't stand against me. Unfortunately, there was one person that did stand against him. That was his wife, the queen. And so then she ended up getting ousted when she wouldn't do what he said. And so, now it's sometime later, and King Xerxes still wants to show that he's the best, and everything's great in his kingdom except for this one thing: he doesn't have a queen. Now, it's not a big deal to him, really, when you think about it, because he's got a whole harem full of women. It's not that, but when you're a king, you're supposed to have a queen, and so it's not like she was really needed to cover a place in the government, but he wants to show. He's got to show off how great he is, and so he's got to have a queen. So his advisors speak to him and say, "Well, here you go. Here's how you find your next trophy wife." So in Esther chapter 2, verse 2, we read, "Then the king's personal attendants proposed, 'Let a search be made for beautiful young virgins for the king. Let the king appoint commissioners in every province of his realm to bring all these beautiful girls into the harem at the citadel of Susa. Let them be placed under the care of Hegai, the king's eunuch, who is in charge of the women, and let beauty treatments be given to them. Then let the girl who pleases the king be queen instead of Vashti.' This advice appealed to the king, and he followed it." What does God's voice sound like? Well, surprisingly, God's voice sounds like the advisors to King Xerxes. See, Xerxes was advised to have this queen competition. They came up with this great idea in order to find him a new queen. We're going to put on, what amounted to a beauty pageant. Or maybe it was more like, the original Who Wants to Marry an Emperor? Or maybe it was the original Bachelor. I don't know. It was all those things wrapped up in one. Really, and when the scripture says there's nothing new under the sun, well, there really isn't. All the crazy TV shows we got now, you know what? People have done that stuff before. All that stuff has happened before, and it happened here in King Xerxes' realm. So they gather all of these girls together to choose a new queen for King Xerxes. This sets God's rescue plan into motion. And it does that even before there's a threat. God is speaking through these advisors, setting this up so that Esther could be in place when she's needed. See, God's doing that all the time. God's always setting things up beforehand, even before there's a problem. He has things in place and people set in place long before the issue arises. See, God prepared Joseph long before there was a famine in the whole land of Egypt and the Middle East there. When he was a young man, God had given Joseph dreams about what was going to happen. And then he had also given him organizational abilities. And Joseph had developed these abilities and skills first as a servant in Potiphar's house, and then as a prisoner in the jail in Egypt. And then he was right there at just the right moment, with just the right skills and just the right understanding to save hundreds and thousands of people when the famine came. God prepares things in advance, even before there's a problem. God's always doing that. God prepares his people for what's going to come. Recently, my son has discovered a new show on TV. It's not a new show. It's a rerun of an old show of this guy MacGyver, who can take anything. I mean, the guy, he's locked up in a jail, and he's got with him a paper clip and some toothpaste and a banana, and he can break out of jail with that. You may feel like just an assortment of odds and ends, just like MacGyver might have, but in God's hands, you're just what he needs and just what he wants, and just what is right for the job. So Esther was placed in this group of women that was brought to have this queen competition. But God didn't stop speaking there. After he had spoken through the advisors to have this queen competition, then God spoke through Mordecai. What does God's voice sound like? Well, God's voice sounds a lot like Mordecai. Mordecai was the cousin of Esther. He had actually, basically adopted her. Her parents had died. Mordecai had taken her in. He had raised her as his own daughter. And so Mordecai speaks to Esther, and God's voice sounds a lot like Mordecai. In verse 10, we read, Esther had not revealed her nationality and family background because Mordecai had forbidden her to do so. God spoke through Mordecai, advising Esther not to reveal her nationality. You see, the person that God was going to use for the rescue had to be strategically placed. She had to be put in place and be there ready when the problem came. She was God's sleeper cell, embedded in the kingdom of Persia. Throughout time, different nations have tried to stomp out God's people. Different nations have risen and tried to kill off the people that are serving God. But God has always said that all nationalities would surround his throne in heaven. God's not going to allow that to happen. He's not going to let his people be exterminated. God's always got his people somewhere within even the most oppressive governments. We know today the Chinese house churches have multiplied despite the government suppression. We know that in Cuba, that laws against gatherings of more than 15 people has only served to multiply churches in houses all over the country. God always has his people, regardless of how man might try to stomp it out. God's always working in ways that we can't even imagine. He's guiding history to the destination that he has determined. The prophet Isaiah said, "My word, God's word, will accomplish what I desire and achieve the purpose for which I sent it." God's going to get his job done. So God's voice. It sounds like the advisors to the king recommending, well, let's gather all these girls. And so Esther is in that group that's gathered. And God's voice sounds like Mordecai telling Esther not to reveal, not to show her hand as to what peoples she was in, so that there's nothing prejudicing people against her. But now, interestingly, God speaks again. And once again, God's voice sounds a little different. This time, God's voice sounds like Haggai, the guy that's in charge of all these women. This whole group was brought together, and this guy he's in charge of getting them ready. He's got to fix them up, whip them into shape, so that they're ready to go and meet the king. And so Haggai speaks to Esther. And he is pleased with Esther, and he takes her in and gives her the best spot, and he makes sure that she gets the best treatment, and then he gives her his advice. And in verse 15 we read, "When the term came for Esther, the girl Mordecai had adopted, the daughter of his uncle Abihail, when a turn came for Esther to go to the king, she asked for nothing other than what Haggai, the king's eunuch, who is in charge of the harem, suggested. And Esther won the favor of everyone who saw her." So what does God's voice sound like? Well, it sounds like Haggai. Haggai advises Esther what it is that she ought to take in to the king. He kind of knows the king. He understands what makes the guy tick, and so he gives Esther a leg up. You see, just because Esther was included in the pool of candidates from which the new queen would be chosen, that still wasn't a guarantee that she would be chosen. It's kind of like the lottery. The odds are not in your favor. I have a hard time explaining that to Micah. Micah has entered several different sweepstakes, hoping to win, this or that or the other, some kind of video game or something. He's entered these sweepstakes, and then he anxiously awaits for the day when, it's going to be announced who the winners are, and he's been disappointed every time. And I try to explain to him the incredible odds and how it's very, very unlikely that his name will be picked, but hope springs eternal. So the odds are stacked against Esther also. I mean, she's just one of who knows how many. I assume they gathered tens, maybe hundreds, maybe 1,000, who knows. I'm sure they gathered plenty of girls, and she's just one. But God stacks the deck, and he does that through Haggai. Haggai first, he likes Esther, and he gives her his best. He makes sure that she gets the best accommodations. He immediately gets her into her beauty treatments, getting her ready. And then he gives her the special instruction, the inside info as to what she ought to take with her to go in to see the king. See, prior to the threat against the Jews, there's going to be a time in this story where the Jews are threatened with extermination, where it has been decreed all throughout the empire that all Jews will be terminated. Before that dire day comes, God has strategically placed Esther. He has spoken through the king's advisors to initiate the search for a new queen. He has spoken through Mordecai to keep Esther's nationality a secret so that she is free from prejudice and doesn't get disqualified because of her family associations. And God speaks through Haggai to give the advantage to Esther so that she would be chosen. God speaks in a lot of different ways. Not just in the big booming voice, but he can speak even through these guys. Some of these guys, they were no believers at all. The advisors to the king, Haggai, did they have any allegiance to the one true God? Probably not. Yet God used them and spoke through them. How has God been speaking in your life? Through whom has God been speaking in your life? You know, hearing God's voice as you read the scriptures, that's one thing. Or hearing God's voice when you're talking with a fellow Christian or you're listening to a pastor or a Bible teacher, that's one thing. Or hearing God's voice in your heart as you pray and spend time with him, that's one thing. But hearing God's voice in an unbeliever, that's another thing. And yet God's done it. God has spoken through unbelievers. He has used them to advance his plans. We have some huge examples of it in our scriptures. There was this King Cyrus, who was the first king of Persia that established the empire all over the world, and the known world at that time. And Cyrus, who didn't believe in God, he wasn't serving the Lord, the God of Israel, and yet he commanded that the temple in Jerusalem be rebuilt. And he started sending the Jews back home from their exile in Babylon. God spoke through Cyrus. Later on, another king of Persia, King Artaxerxes, commanded the rebuilding of the wall in Jerusalem. Once again, God is advancing his plans through people that know nothing of him or care nothing for him. Jesus has said that his sheep hear his voice and they know him. It's a lot easier to hear God's voice when it's coming from a God-approved source. It's more difficult to recognize God's voice when he's speaking through somebody that's, well, not really looking to serve him. And yet God can use them. Even those who are opposing God, he can use them to fulfill his purposes. Now, this should be a great encouragement to us. Because a lot of times we can fret over decisions that need to be made and worry, well, God, am I doing your will? Am I choosing the right way? Well, if God can take someone who cares nothing for him and isn't looking to do what he wants and doesn't listen to him at all and yet use that person to advance his own purposes, then how much more someone that sincerely wants to do what God is instructing? How much more can he talk to us? See, these people in the story, they didn't necessarily know when they were speaking for God. The advisors, they were just giving a solution to the king. They didn't know that they were advancing God's plan. Mordecai, he's just protecting his niece or his adopted daughter. He doesn't really know how it's all going to work out, even though he is wanting to serve the Lord. He doesn't really understand what he's doing in setting up Esther here. And then Haggai, well, he's just helping out this woman that he likes. He doesn't know he's advancing God's plan. And yet God can work through all of those people. But hearing God's voice, it's not simply about recognizing Jesus' voice so that you can be sure to make the right decision. It's recognizing how God is working through your circumstances. It's resting in the fact of God's sovereignty, that God's in control no matter what. It's believing that no matter how bad things look, God is in control. And he's going to win in the end. That's always what we want to be. We want to be on God's side. We want to be on the winning side. Every 4 years in our country, people wring their hands fretting that the world's going to end. Whoever it is that gets elected, there's always another group that's moaning about how, this is it. Oh, this is so terrible, and, this is going to end life as we know it. One election cycle, it's the Republicans doing that, and then the next election cycle, it's the Democrats doing that. But the truth is, God is in control. Regardless of whether the leader is seeking the Lord's guidance or not, God is in control. Throughout the Scriptures, we see God often placing a person right next to the person in charge. Whether that person is honest or corrupt, whether that person is seeking God's will or not, regardless of that, God places his person in close. And his representative is there to influence so that God's purposes might be fulfilled. See, Joseph was made second in command to Pharaoh. And so Joseph was there to guide things and save his family and the future nation of Israel. Daniel was placed second into command to several Babylonian kings. Nehemiah had a close relationship with the king of Persia. And Esther here is placed in royal position so that she's right there, able to speak a message to the most powerful man on earth. See, the message of Esther is that God is in control, that he uses whatever means he wants to advance his purposes. We need to be sensitive to what God's doing around us so that we might join with him, that we might be part of advancing rather than hindering his purposes. We can't just listen to, that person, that person is not listening to God. He's not serving the Lord, and so therefore his opinion counts for nothing, and we discard that. Well, no, we can't do that because God can speak even through the person that doesn't care anything for him. As Abraham Lincoln famously said when he was asked if he thought God was on the side of the Union Army, President Lincoln replied, "Sir, my concern is not whether God is on our side. My greatest concern is to be on God's side, for God is always right." At various points in Esther's story, Esther could have rebelled against the things that were happening to her because she was being done wrong. It was just bad things that were happening. And she could have rebelled against it, and in doing so, she could have ended up outside of God's will. You see, Esther was orphaned. Her parents had died. God spoke into her life and had her adopted by Mordecai. Now, Esther could have rebelled against that. She could have been sullen and said, oh, woe is me. But yet she listened to Mordecai, and she grew up into a very fine young lady. Esther was forced into this queen competition. She didn't choose that. But God got her the favor of Haggai, the guy in charge, so that she would do well there. She could have rebelled against that whole thing. She could have not taken it as advice. She could have just sabotaged her chances so that she wouldn't end up to be the queen. Because, frankly, being the queen didn't mean you had a whole lot of power. You really didn't. You just had to do what the king said. And Esther was given to this strange man. Ended up wife of this man that, she had never met before. But God caused her to be favored and made queen. She could have rebelled against that, not tried to please the king, but instead, she went with it. None of that was Esther's choosing. It's all the things that life dealt her. Not the way that I'm sure she would have drawn up her life. But God worked in each situation. Though it wasn't ideal, God worked for good. And because of that, Esther is pivotal in bringing us salvation. Because without Esther, there would not have been a Jesus. Because without Esther, the Jewish people would have been exterminated. And so therefore, there would have been no family of God for Jesus to be born into. And then there would have been no salvation for us. The prophet Balaam knew how to get messages from God. He knew how to hear God's voice. He had heard God's voice on many occasions, but one day it took God speaking through a donkey to get through to Balaam. God's voice sounded like a donkey in that case, yeah. You see, God's voice can sound like a lot of different things. He's in control, and he can speak in whatever way he wants and through whomever he wants. That's why we can't dismiss anyone expressing their opinion. You see, nowadays we're tempted because there are so many opinions and there's so many different people screaming things from all different places. And there's people that, well, I don't agree with their politics, and I don't agree with their lifestyle, and I don't agree with what they stand for, and so therefore I'm not going to listen to them at all. But yet we can't do that, because God can even speak through that person that is completely wrong, that person who is completely opposed to God, the person that is completely trying to go the opposite direction of what God's will might be. Yet God can even use that person to speak his truth and to advance his purposes. There are a lot of different ideas out there. Some are foolish and some are sensible. We can't just immediately ignore just considering the source of an idea. Instead, we've got to be attentive with the ears of faith, to listen and to discern God's voice. Because God's voice can sound like anything, even a donkey, or even a Democrat, or even a Republican. We've got to listen for God's voice, no matter what it may sound like.